Hongkong liczy niecałe 8 milionów mieszkańców, a Wong Yik-Mo już jest współorganizatorem protestów, które łącznie za każdym razem mobilizowały 1/4 ludności, 1,7 miliona, 1,5 miliona. To są gigantyczne protesty. Joshua Wong, który w tym czasie musiał polecieć do Nowego Jorku po to, żeby przekonywać Kongres amerykański na rzecz zaangażowania Stanów Zjednoczonych w ten pokojowy protest po to, żeby Chiny wycofały się z autorytarnych zakusów na Hongkong. Osobiście wydelegował swojego zastępcę. Nie może być nieobecny, natomiast Mo przeczyta list od Joshua Wonga, który jest liderem. Jest młodym człowiekiem, jest 20-kilkulatkiem, ale robi to, co bohaterowie Solidarności, co Lech Wałęsa, co Władysław Frasyniuk, Janka Ochojska, którzy bardzo przepraszają, że ich dzisiaj nie będzie, postanowili zostawić scenę dla młodych. W każdym razie ci młodzi 20-kilkulatkowie z Hongkongu robią to, co nasi bohaterowie robili 40 i 30 lat temu. Dlatego jesteśmy dumni, że możemy go powitać, że będziemy mogli posłuchać jego przesłania od protestujących, że właśnie na Igrzyskach Wolności po Lechu Wałęsie wystąpi ktoś, kto o demokrację walczy dzisiaj. To nie jest abstrakcja. Oni naprawdę próbują zachować swoje podstawowe prawa, prawo do autonomii, a prawo do wybierania, władz nie mogą wybierać, tak? Ale przynajmniej do tego, żeby mieć minimum liberalizmu, bo o demokracji tam do końca nie ma mowy. Dlatego mam nadzieję, że kiedy Mo pojawi się tutaj na scenie, powinien nastąpić za dosłownie 3-4 minuty. Powiedziałem go Państwo. Jest. Świetnie. Okej. W takim razie, drodzy Państwo, pozwólcie, że przedstawię. Wong Yik-Mo to jest wiceprzewodniczący Obywatelskiego Frontu Praw Człowieka, organizacji, która stanęła na czele masowych protestów, które ogarnęły Hongkong na wieś o projekcie ustawy pozwalającej na ekstradycję podejrzanych o przestępstwa do Chin. Mo ma do nas list od protestujących. Zapraszam. Mo, please. The floor is yours. We're honored.
Dear friends of the civil society, from the 80s last century, the Polish people fought against the authoritarian regime in a huge solidarity movement. More than 1/4 of its population joined unions. In 2019, 2 million of people took the streets in Hong Kong. Also, more than 1/4 of our population to say no to our authoritarian government. Poland and Hong Kong do share similar situations and challenges. In fact, if we ask our teachers, professors, and veterans in social movements, they will tell you that history of Eastern Europe, especially Poland, is a lesson that we all ought to learn from, should we wish to gain freedom and democracy. Thank you, Freedom Games, for giving me this opportunity of honor to deliver a speech in Poland on behalf of Joshua Wong and Hong Kong protesters who are still fighting every day in the streets, in shopping malls, in metro stations, and everywhere in Hong Kong. In fact, this is a leaderless movement. Nobody is a leader. We are all leaders. On 9th of June, 1 million people took to the streets. Yet our chief executive, Carrie Lam, announced that very night that the second reading of the extradition bill would resume. On 12th of June, people surrounded our legislature peacefully, and the government cracked down on us with excessive force. On 16th of June, 2 million people took to the streets to say no to police violence and the governance of Carrie Lam. Well, she even said that citizens had no stake in the society. But of course, this is not true. We all belong to Hong Kong, and should have the right to say no to the government. In return, we get violence. Beginning from 12th of June, the violence of the police kept escalating. From tear gas, expired tear gas, rubber bullets, beanbag rounds, to the most usual but also very dangerous weapon, batons. The police used violence to crack down on peaceful protests. Till today, 1,200 were arrested. More than 100 were already prosecuted, and 2 have lost one of their eyes. Countless were injured by the police, and in some cases, protesters were detained in facilities where no light was granted. Arrested protesters were threatened and terrified and beaten until their bones broke and not granted the opportunity to go to doctors. Other detainees could do nothing but to witness the atrocity. Female protesters were sexually harassed and humiliated. In Hong Kong, we talk about rule of law, but the behavior of the police is surely not in compliance of the rule of law. The government is trying to rule by terror. Increasingly, violence clashes between protesters and the police have turned a thriving metropolis into an urban war zone. Young people's voices have gone from loud to deafening as they refuse to be brushed aside in the same way they were in 2014 in the umbrella movement. Even after the government conceded by the withdrawing of the extradition bill, protesters continue to take to the streets in great numbers, shifting their focus back to the still unfulfilled promise of universal suffrage. Cathay Pacific, renowned Hong Kong corporate owned by Swire, has been infiltrated by Chinese influence. At least 14 employees of Hong Kong's aviation sector have been dismissed just for supporting the movement, including pilots of Cathay Pacific and the chairperson of Cathay Dragons Union. Cabin crews need to have mobile phones unlocked and censored by Chinese authorities when entering into Chinese territory. Simply by giving a like on Facebook could cause their dismissal. Staff were encouraged to report their colleagues, so people were silenced. But we know this is a typical tactic of the communist regime, to turn people against each other and create white terror. But we need to be brave and combat such white terror, because freedom of expression is our fundamental right. 5 years ago, although the umbrella movement ended without reaching its stated political goals, and Beijing remained as uncompromising as ever towards our call for democracy, the movement achieved something far greater than anything we have expected. The movement awakened generations of Hong Kong people whose political empathy had for too long been the biggest enabler of our unelected, unaccountable government. Just like the Polish population enlightened by the numerous movements before the Solidarity movement. Rome was not built in one day. Ordinary citizens came to realize the enormous power they wield if they act together, using online forums and social media to organize themselves and engage in international communities. We understand the images of Tiananmen massacre in Beijing shocked the whole world and had influence to the Polish legislative election in Poland in 1989. Election right is something that we are fighting for, because free election is stipulated in our basic law, promised by Beijing. If the Polish people could have one election, so should we be able to do so. But at first, we need to have a free election. Hong Kong is much more than meets in the eye. Beyond the soaring skyscrapers and glimmering shopping malls, it is the only place in China, Chinese soil, where citizens dare stand up to those in power and, once in a while, manage to force concessions out of them. Successful population uprising in the last 7 years have come to underscore the inherent contradictions of a totalitarian state running and tolerating a free society. There are manifestations of the widening cracks within the one country, two systems framework that once navigated the city through its smooth transition from colonial to Chinese rule. For better or worse, these tidal waves of resistance are transforming Hong Kong once again, from an economic city to a political stronghold, notwithstanding Beijing's effort to keep the city in a state of perpetual adolescence. The latter has outgrown both itself and its master. The David versus Goliath narrative has come to symbolize the improbable but undeniable struggle against a regime that appears invincible both at home and abroad. In many ways, the one country, two systems formula for Hong Kong is also the way the communist leadership views the relationship with the rest of the world, including Poland. It is grand vision of a new global order. Beijing has been pushing a one world, two empires proposition, where the United States and its allies defend their liberty, rights-based ideology, while China and other one-party states demand non-interference from the free world, while quietly pursuing an expansionary agenda. It is high time we call for solidarity. Nothing else is now more pressing than calling for a united force resisting authoritarian regime with authoritarian China. If we stop protesting now, no one will be able to hold Carrie Lam and her government responsible for the wrongdoings. Human rights violations and police violence. This is no olive branch, no reconciliation, but a tighter grip. We believe this is mere tactic amidst to buy time and paint an illusion of peace before 1st of October, the National Day of China. If we stop now and let her succeed, international attention on the problem will disappear and further political purge will take place. Today, people in Hong Kong face physical assault from gangsters, from the police, just by singing our hymn, a song that emerged in this movement, lyrics that tell our sorrow and rage, but also as an encouragement to our fight for the better Hong Kong. May I now take this opportunity to share with you the song, with courtesy translation by former legislator Margaret Ng. My land, what are tears fast falling? People, what is your anger rage? Head high, break this silence and cry, freedom belongs to this place. Dark fears can never be erased, but faith will guide us all the way. Advance, even through blood and tears, for our Hong Kong free and bright. The stars are fallen. Darkness reigns through fog and mist, a clarion call from far. Gather here, stand firm together, for liberty we fight. Courage, wisdom will never die. See, dawn breaks, Hong Kong again clothed in light. O daughters and sons, for justice in our time, may freedom and democracy forever live. May glory to be thee, Hong Kong. I'm not a leader in this movement, nor is Joshua Wong the leader. We're all Hong Kongers loving our home and fighting for our home. The glory to Hong Kong, glory to the people. Let's stand in solidarity for a better world. Thank you.
Proszę Państwa, to wzruszające, że Igrzyska Wolności mogą być areną. Czy mogę prosić, żeby ktoś przyniósł słuchawki dla naszego gościa do pierwszego rzędu? So I'll switch to English just for behalf of Mo. So we're so proud that the Freedom Games are the place where it's not only the history, it is not only in theory that we unite with those who struggle and fight for freedom and democracy. And to have 1/4 of the population to protest, kiedy mamy 1/4 ludności, która protestuje przeciwko opresyjnej władzy, to tak jakby, proszę Państwa, w Polsce 8 milionów ludzi wyszło na ulicę. Myślę, że jeszcze dużo możemy się od Hongkongu nauczyć. Miejmy nadzieję, że nigdy nie znajdziemy się w takim położeniu, w jakim znajduje się wolne miasto Hongkong. May live free Hong Kong. Jesteśmy z Wami. Tego nas powinna nauczyć solidarność. Zawsze być po stronie bitych. Zawsze być po stronie bitych.